There is a huge difference between intellectually knowing your human design and actually applying it and living it. One feels really good and satisfying and can be really fun, and the other can be a little bit scary at first, but leads to the most incredible alignment imaginable. Welcome back to part two of our series, Your Future Depends on Knowing Who You Are. Katie and I are back with another episode, and we're going to talk so much about what it feels like to know intellectually and have a mental understanding of your human design, strategy, authority, gates, channels, and all of that, and how different it feels to actually live it. So without any further ado, let's get into this conversation. Welcome to episode two. We're so excited to be talking about the difference between knowing your human design versus actually living it. And I don't know about you, but I definitely know that this speaks to a lot of the students that I've worked with who love to just hoard information. Like we love to get a lot of knowledge and learn a lot of things, and it feels really good. And it's actually extremely important to have an intellectual understanding of this stuff before you can actually experiment with it, obviously, but we can't get stuck there. So that's why I'm here again with Katie Irvin. So excited to get into this conversation. And we are going to give you guys some really good personal examples before knowing our human design, then knowing our human design, but not actually living it, and then what it looks like to actually live it. So super excited, so stoked to yap again about one of our favorite topics ever. But yeah, so even though it feels so good to study, and it's obviously so important because you can't experiment with something that you don't know, eventually there needs to be a certain point where you do actually start working with it, where you do actually start putting it into practice, which is something that you and I really both love. We love the practical application of this stuff. How would you describe the experience of knowing versus actually living your design? And I'm just curious as to know what other thoughts you have about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be a little bit scary to actually start living your design. It's one thing to have the knowledge of like, this is how I'm supposed to operate, this is how things are supposed to work. And it's another thing to then be like, okay, universe, like, show me how this works, right? Especially if you've been operating so differently throughout your whole life, which was certainly the case for me. And I think there's a lot of safety and a lot of comfort, like I said, about being in the research, especially if you're a line one profile. It's really comfy to just
Yes.
learn and learn and learn and not actually get into the experimentation of it, because that, again, like that's you putting your life on the line, like your future on the line of, okay, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to not do things the way I did before. Or maybe for you, it is actually the same way, because maybe you're one of these like lucky people that just happens to be aligned throughout your life. But I think this is a bit of a tangent, but that's okay. We can start here. I know we were talking a couple of weeks ago, this idea of your sacral and using your sacral, and how a lot of people, I think, avoid that relationship because it tells the truth. And I think a lot of things in our human design do this, is the more you get into alignment and the more you start experimenting, the more you really get to know what your truth is. And a lot of times we haven't been living that way. We've been living in a way that's so conditioned. We have been dressing in a way that our parents, our society, our partners, our friends, whatever, expect us to dress. We've been making decisions in the way that other people expect us to make decisions. And I don't just mean like making decisions with your authority or not, but I mean like you have been making decisions that are in line with the person that people think you are,
Yeah.
and maybe even the person that you think you are. And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, you allow this deeper knowing of yourself to have a voice. And it can be surprising, the things that it's interested in, the things that it wants to do. And it might not fit your current plan for your life. It might not fit your
Yeah.
current relationship. It might not fit your current job. It might
Yeah.
not fit who you are as a member of society. Like it might be quite different. And that is a scary place to be. And
Yeah.
so I think as people make this transition, there's a jump from, okay, this is interesting information, to like, am I actually going to let this system expose me for who I really am when I don't even fully know that? And
Yeah, man.
that's a big thing, And that's sometimes the reason. I mean, I think a lot of the times it's the reason when people first get into design, like this happened for me, and I'm grateful looking back, but it was a rough time where your life kind of falls apart. And it's not always a smooth transition into alignment and everything is flowing
Totally.
and so easy. Like what it felt like for me at the time was that I had this fake house that I had bulldozed, and I didn't actually have a house. This is just like my metaphor for my life. But it felt like when I found design that I realized that I had been living in like a sham of a house, and I had to completely destroy
Mhm.
it and then start rebuilding it. And not everyone's experience is going to be that dramatic. Like, I don't think yours was that dramatic,
Right.
but it can be that way. And so it can be scary to cross the line from just knowing this information, liking some Instagram posts about being whatever type you are, you know, maybe
Yeah.
learning about your gates rather than actually experimenting with them and listening to the truth that your body is giving you, because it might take you in a completely new direction that you weren't prepared for, that maybe requires some destruction to make space for what is more aligned for you to come through.
I love that you started here because to your point, my experience of finding my human design wasn't, it still propelled me into taking a leap of faith in the sense of like starting my own business and stuff. But it's a helpful reminder for me to remember that for some people, they weren't even close to alignment, you know, when they discovered human design, like you, right? No, exactly. And so my experience of this right now is we're recording this on the new moon. It's new moon in Capricorn. It's the first new moon of the year. I love New Year's, love new beginnings. And it feels like this is really a conversation about what quantum leaping feels like and sort of letting
Mhm.
go of old identities. And when you quantum leap, when you transition into a new identity or you want to take on a new manifestation or something like that, you do let go of stuff that is comfortable, of stuff that is safe. You know, have to destroy your house, which by the way, your house analogy has been very helpful to me. So like, you know, imagining yourself and your identity and you know what you know to be true as like your foundation. And it absolutely can be so frightening. But my experience of working with my human design, as you sort of are alluding to as well, is like this truth that you're talking about. For me, the way that I've described it is the more that you decondition and the more that you move in alignment with your human design, the more impossible it is to do stuff that isn't aligned with your human design. And
Yeah.
that is scary because maybe the old stuff is the stuff that's comfortable, is the stuff that people know you to be that way. And so it would just be easier to continue to be your old self around those relationships, whether they be family or coworkers or things like that. I was also thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about the pandemic, and so many people got to really discover who they were outside of the sort of daily routines that they were in. They got to break that routine, be within themselves. I know that our businesses were really at the right place at the right time during the pandemic because people were wanting to find out more who they were. They were wanting to come online. And I just remember seeing so many people on the internet just kind of like post their new selves, you know, and that is awesome and courageous. But to your point, it can be so scary to do that. And so I just wanted to name that right away for anyone listening. Like you might be liking a lot of Instagram posts, feeling really validated and being like, oh, wow, this is like the system that is most best described me, like Katie and I's experience was, or you might be having another experience of being seen. And also if you're feeling afraid to like take the leap into moving towards that truth, even if it feels true to you, it still might be scary to do it, that it's okay. And we're going to talk through some examples and how we have gone through things like that in our own life. So anyway, thanks for naming that. I think that is probably alive for a lot of people.
Yeah. And again, like I said, it was a rough time to go through, but I'm very grateful I did go through it, because
Yeah.
the other option is staying in a life that I felt trapped in, you know, in a life that felt deeply unfulfilling, that was not at all who I was at my core. And, you know, me finding human design coincided with me getting divorced. So it's not because of human design, to clarify, but they just both seem to happen at the same time. And I remember before I got divorced thinking that getting divorced would be the worst possible thing that could happen, that like it would be
Mm,
the worst. Like there is nothing worse that could happen in my life right now than getting divorced, right?
right.
And like I was really of the thought that when you got married, you stayed married and like you made it work. And my mind changed. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm grateful for that experience in a way, because whenever there are scary things in my life, and as there are often in life, you know, is to think that this one thing that I used to think was the scariest thing was my ticket to freedom, you know? And so I
Yeah.
invite you to adopt that lens if there's something in your life right now that you think this is the worst thing that could happen. And you hear it all the time from people, like declaring bankruptcy, getting
Right.
divorced, losing their job, even like, God forbid, getting into some kind of accident or having a health crisis. And that's actually the thing that changes things for them. And not that
Yeah.
it needs to be, right? You don't need to have a huge dramatic change. You can also have these little changes changes day by day that add up and eventually take you in a completely different direction. Like there's this book called The Compound Effect that talks a lot about that, but that at times when it feels like I couldn't survive if things got destroyed or I couldn't make it through, like you not only can, but you're probably going to be better off on the other side.
Yeah, so true. And as someone that has gone through many recent shocking uprooting experiences, it's such a good reminder that even if they were the scariest thing at the time, I know that I'll have my looking back in hindsight 2020 and being grateful for these experiences too, as I already have so many examples of those in my life. So love that. Let's get into talking real practical on some examples of times before we knew our human design, then when we knew our human design but weren't actually living it, and then to living it. And I would actually love for you to start because I know that you have a little bit of a controversial take on one of the most important things when it comes to getting started with your human design.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when they start with human design, they really focus on type and what their strategy is. And I get it because we're used to, I don't know, let's say our zodiacs or our Myers-Briggs, where it's like, oh, what's your type? What's your sign? What's your this? And so the equivalent to that obviously is type in human design. And I think a lot of people get in on that. But I think that sometimes can be a bit of a confusing place to start or a bit of a disempowering place to start because you're thinking like, oh, like now I have to wait to respond. Like I can't do stuff, or like, oh, I have to wait for an invitation, or I have to like wait a whole lunar cycle. Like even with manifestors having to wait for the urge, you know? And so one of the things that I really recommend, and I think is so important, the most important part of human design, if you never do anything else with it, to learn what your authority is and to start experimenting with your authority, because we are all making decisions like all day, every day. We have so many choices in our world. And I really look at authority as like our Google Maps to life. And if you are constantly making the wrong decision, you are never going to get to where you want to go. You are never going to get to a place that feels aligned. And when you are in the wrong place, but if you start making correct decisions or aligned decisions, you get to an aligned place, right? And so I really think that in that sense, authority is even more important than type, not so much than type, but then with strategy, let's say. Because another thing that happens is, let's say you're a projector and you understand you're supposed to operate through getting invitations. You get an invitation finally, and you're like, oh my God, yes. And it's actually not the right invitation for you, because just because it's an invitation doesn't mean it's the right invitation, right? And same things with anything that you respond to, same thing with any urges. When you're getting these things that you can do, it doesn't mean that they're the right thing to do. And so having a really good handle on your authority first and foremost is what I think is so crucial about, I don't want to say getting human design right, but yeah, about getting your human design right, quite honestly.
I mean, I would say that it's about getting your human design right for sure, because it's not about necessarily rightness in the way that we think about it before we get into human design language. Because when we think about getting it right before human design, it's like getting it perfect, doing it by the book, you know, having to follow this perfect set of rules. But what I like about the rightness in the language of human design is just something that's correct for you. It's like correctness is sort of what that language translates to for me. And we do want to get to a sense of rightness and alignment with our human design, like our actual individual type, not the idea of human design, but actually like our type. So I would use the language of getting it right with human design. We have so much to say about authority, but just before we get into it, can you give listeners just a quick recap as to how you would define authority?
Yeah, authority is just how you're designed to make decisions. So again, it's like, I think one of the simplest things to understand in human design, we all know how to make decisions. So it's like, how are you specifically designed to make them? There's 7 different options. And like I said, if you don't know what yours is, the link below will take you to a place that you can find out. And then I have an episode on my podcast where I go into each authority. So if you're not sure, you can head there and learn about that.
Yes, everything will be linked below. I'll just add that I love the language of your authorities, like your inner authority. One of your centers is the authority inside of you that is a trustworthy source of decision making and guidance, versus the contrast being outer authority or someone's external authorities like societal conditioning, what your mom thinks you should do, what all your friends are, you know, texting you that you should say back to this person, etc. All that stuff is clutter. We want to get into what is your inner authority telling you, what is the guidance within that you're getting, and that is safe and trustworthy. So with that being said, let's yap about authority.
So given that I think your authority is one of the most important things, if you don't know what your authority is yet, in the show notes, we'll have a link that you can go and find your authority at. And then once you have that, again, if you don't know what it is, I have an episode on my podcast, which I will also link below. So go and listen to that episode first and then come back, because you need to have somewhat of an understanding of what your authority is, I think, for this part to really make sense. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about experimenting with your authority, because again, we want to make this episode more practical about the difference between knowing your design and living it. So let's talk about how to actually start experimenting with this aspect of your design.
Let's do it.
And so I'm curious, what are some of the examples that you've experienced as you've used your authority? Like, was it something that was natural to you? Was it something that you just like always did? Because I know that wasn't the case for me, but I'm curious what it was for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I like that we share an authority, but then we don't share strategies, so we can sort of talk from different perspectives there. So Katie and I are both emotional authority, and actually 50% of the population is also emotional authority. And this is one of those authorities where you want to wait to make a decision. And the bigger the decision is, the more time you want to give yourself. And specifically, the way I describe emotional authority, at least, or the way that I experience it, is when you are faced with a decision, you're going to start riding an emotional wave. You're going to hit a high and a low. And at some point after hitting both peaks, you'll have clarity. And something that's been helpful that I learned from you is like, you really won't ever have like 100% clarity as an emotional authority. Like, it won't ever be just so perfectly clear. But somewhere after getting the information from the high and then the low, and you're feeling more stable, that's the moment to make the decision. That will be the best moment, rather, to make the decision. And yeah, before discovering that that was my authority, I definitely subscribed to the belief of like being decisive, and I really wanted to be one of those people that had like gut knowings, and like a yes, like this is for me. And I wanted to be one of those people that was like really certain. And I think that's like undefined ajna conditioning. I wanted to be certain. I think that that's just like hustle culture, American, just like be decisive, and all these like Mel Robbins types or whatever. Not that Mel Robbins is pushing being decisive, but I categorize all of these like personal growth people in that same category. And maybe some of them tell you to wait, but yeah. What were you gonna say?
And I know there's a quote, I don't remember who it's by, but it says successful people make decisions quickly and change their minds slowly. And
Oh,
that's
God.
not the truth for 50% of us,
Exactly.
Like that person was probably a sacral authority, right? Or a splenic maybe, but.
Exactly. Yeah. And I felt like if I just meditated enough, and if I just, became enlightened enough in some type of way, then I would become a person that was really decisive and that could like hear my intuition or my gut more quickly. But that was just never going to be the case for me. And I will still, I'm a manifesting generator. So I have a sacral defined. It is directly connected to my throat, and my sacral is connected to my emotional center and my splenic center. So I will have connections to like splenic intuition, and I will have like sacral responses, but neither of those override the fact that I do need to like wait out my authority. So yeah, I feel like I was really young when I discovered human design. I was like 24 or something like that. So I hadn't necessarily been faced with like a lot of really huge decisions in terms of like, man, I wish I hadn't like made this decision in a rash mindset, but I did make a lot of decisions in a rash mindset. And I also rode a lot of emotional highs, and I made a lot of decisions in emotional highs. And I would get so, especially, I'm just thinking back of like the time where I was applying for jobs, for example, just how high I would get on the idea of like, this is the job and I'm going to totally live this life. And yes, I'm going to say yes, no matter what they tell me the salary is or whatever. And then either getting the job or not or whatever. And I just really struggled to understand why I couldn't be like cool, calm, and collected. Like I just wanted to be a person that was like a lot more stable. I remember during my study abroad experience, I had the coolest study abroad experience in the world, where I spent 6 weeks in Cape Cod preparing for a research cruise. And then I spent 6 weeks sailing from New Zealand to Tahiti on a 2-masted tall ship, both being the crew of the tall ship and then also doing my own research projects and also doing research for the organization. And I remember for like some team bonding stuff, first of all, on land, they made us do our Myers-Briggs test. And I was like, LOL, because they're trying to put us together in watches, because you'd be like living with these people, for 6 weeks and doing everything with them. But then on the boat, they had us do this exercise, and it was like, stand over here if you're like a cool cucumber, and then over here if you're like a hot chili pepper. And I really wanted to be a cool cucumber. And I remember that one of my shipmates was like, you're not a cool cucumber. And I was like, okay, well, rude. And I was like, and I would get, I just remember that like made me so upset because I was like, I want to be cool. And I'm not cool emotionally in that way. Like I am going to be writing emotional waves and I am going to be writing, yeah, like if you have your emotional center defined, like you're just generating emotions all the times and you're just riding a
Mhm.
wave all of the time. You're never like really free of it. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. That isn't a bad thing at all, especially once you know how to work with it. But yeah, before I wanted to be like, I just wanted to be cool and chill and mysterious and Scorpio and all of that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So yeah, I wanted to be a cool cucumber and I totally still can be, just not in the emotional authority sense of the word. And when I discovered that I had emotional authority, it was like, oh, this makes a lot more sense. And I
Mhm.
felt relief. I felt relief around like, I should wait, I should wait to decide on especially bigger things. So I got pretty lucky in the sense that when I actually got into my authority, not only did I learn what emotional authority was, but where I learned it from had a specific video for people that have a sacral defined, emotional authority, and a splenic center defined. And this is getting into, one of our episodes of this series that Katie and I are going to get into is like how important nuance is. And we're going to talk about
Mhm.
emotional authority right now and how important it is, but also Katie and I are emotional authority, but we also have completely different designs. The rest of our designs are very different. We have different emotional waves. And so getting into the nuance of your emotional authority and then design in general, I think is really, really important. And so this was one of the gifts that I got was I immediately learned about my authority with a little bit more nuance because it had that information
Mhm.
around I also have a sacral defined and then I also have a splenic center defined. And so I don't have a strong memory of like learning about emotional authority beforehand other than like needing to wait. But then watching this video, I was like, this makes so much more sense to me. Like, again, I felt relief around like, oh, I don't need to be this decisive person and like trying to force myself to be that and like be a cool cucumber or whatever was just like causing me like strife and like shame anyway. So like, thank God I can just be free of that, right? The power of knowing what you're not, hint, hint. But yeah, once I got into the way that this style of authority was described, it was like, okay, if you have a sacral defined, you're going to have this strong experience of like getting a sacral response and then that kicking off an emotional wave. And I was like, that makes so much more sense than whatever else the fuck I was trying to do. Write pro and cons list, make everything super like logical. I don't have a single logical
Mhm.
gate in my chart, so it's like having to put things in numbers, having to talk to, unfortunately, I'm just going to say that right, the men in my life, who are so, I have 3 brothers, right? And so they're also like logical and they can be so masculine. And my experience in my chart is that it's quite feminine. I have a lot of Capricorn and, whatever, but that's actually a feminine element. The earth element is one of the feminine ones. And so I actually have quite a flowy experience of life and I don't make decisions based on logic. And discovering that intense nuance about my chart, let alone the fact that it was also emotional authority, gave me just so much more ability to let myself be more, honestly, like more flowy and more spiritual with my decision making versus before I
Mm.
was really trying to force myself to be a lot more logical and I do things, I'm a data driven decision maker and just those sort of, I had these dreams of being like a startup CEO and making all these, I don't know, just very, it all felt very technical, very masculine, which I can be very masculine as well, but I'm just fucking woo as fuck and I do things based off vibes and all of my charts are like, hey girl, you just do everything based on vibes. And yeah, it was helpful for that. Now we're going to get into whether or not, you and I have been like perfect at using our authority even after knowing it, because that's the challenge too. But yeah, right away, it was a lot of relief for me and like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try to do this as much as I can.
Yeah, for me immediately as well. I saw all of these decisions like flash before my eyes and realized I had not been doing this because I
Yeah,
also made really quick decisions. And I was also, for some reason, really quick to make commitments. And that's really
interesting.
what bit me in the butt
Right.
because I would commit to things. And then I guess basically what would happen is I was riding my wave unknowingly and then realize that, oh, this was not the decision I should have made. Like, this is not the school I should be going to. This is not the job I should have taken. This is not the man I should be engaged to. This is not, all of these things. And it just really built more distrust with myself because I thought I just make bad decisions. And like, that's
Mm.
not, I mean, that was true. But
Sure.
it was true because I wasn't making decisions in a way that I meant to make decisions. And
Because of
I know we,
conditioning, and so many, yeah,
yeah.
not through
Well,
too much fault of your own.
no, and again, knowing my family and everyone in my close family, my parents and my brother, two of them also have emotional authorities like me, and then one of them has an environmental authority. So no one in my family is a like quick decision maker or like a sure
Mm.
decision maker, right? So I think I saw a lot of that growing up of like the indecision and the not knowing and like weighing pros and cons and trying to figure out what the best thing is and just like not really having a solid sense of what is right. And it was a relief, I think, because it gave me like a new chance of, oh, okay, I've been getting it wrong, but now there's this other way of understanding. And something else that really gave me relief, I would say, through all of this is understanding the emotional wave. Because so if you have your emotional center defined or colored in human design, you will have an emotional wave. There's three main different types of emotional waves. They give you different experiences. And realizing that I had high highs and low lows, and like that's just my life. Again, it gave me a lot of peace because I had gone through a depression when I was younger and I was so scared of going back there. So every
Mm.
time there was like a hint of a low, I was like, no, shut it off. Stop, 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 stop. Like emergency brake. How do we get out of this? I don't want to feel this. I don't want to go through this again. And because of that, I really, I think, was stagnating emotionally. And I wasn't really letting the energy move or be felt. And not to turn this into an emotional authority podcast, but if you have emotional authority, you have to let your feelings move because that's where your clarity is coming from. Like you have to feel things, you have to experience them. So again, in the realm of knowing your design and living it, if you have emotional energy in your design, you have to feel your feelings. There is no way around it. Like you cannot
Yeah.
be aligned making good decisions with emotional authority, which again, 50% of the population is. It's the most popular authority. If you're not allowing
Yep.
yourself to feel your emotions, you're not going to be making correct decisions. So that was again just like such a relief of like, oh, it's okay for me to feel like not good and that this actually isn't going to last forever. Like as the wave comes down, it's going to come up, and as it comes up, it's going to come down, and like it's okay. It's just a part of the human experience. It doesn't mean I'm doing it bad or I'm doing it wrong or I'm not perfect or which I'm not perfect, by the way. Nobody is. But
No.
but yeah, it was a really big relief. And I remember for me, there was one day in 2020 actually that really like clicked in for me. And because of the pandemic, I ended up moving out of the place I was living in because the person had to come home. And there was another place that had become available. At the time, I was living with my boyfriend, but that wasn't the end plan. Like we wanted to have separate spaces. And this place became available. It was a 2-bedroom place in Toronto for like basically free, like not actually, but I don't know, $1,400, which in Toronto, that's unheard of for a 2-bedroom place.
Yeah.
And I was so close to pouncing on it because I thought, oh my God, like I have to take this. This is such a good price. Like I'm never going to get another opportunity like this. And then my boyfriend at the time, because it was through one of his connections, said like, it's okay. Like you don't have to make the decision today. You can sleep on it, you know? And the
Mhm.
next day I was walking through the neighborhood and I saw it with such different eyes of like, I would hate living here. Like, I don't like this neighborhood. This apartment looks over a garbage dump. Like, I would hate this.
Yeah.
And again, it's like the soberness of your emotional wave of seeing things with clarity of like, oh, and again, I didn't have to answer right away. So I rode through the like, ew part of the wave. And then I
Right.
came to clarity of like, yeah, I don't need to do this. Like, it's okay. I'm not desperate. I don't need to make a decision now. It's true. Maybe I'm never going to find another 2-bedroom apartment for that price, but maybe I'll find something better. And I did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I could go for so much longer and talk about how important emotional authority is. And like we could have a whole emotional authority episode and yap about all of that. But we will save that for another day. And instead, I'll actually let you take the lead on giving the listeners some really good practical examples on actually experimenting with your authority because you just have so many good things to say about it. So take it away.
Yeah, so I always recommend when you're starting this process of experimentation to actually just like set an intention of like, okay, I'm going to enter into this experiment. I am not saying it has to go a certain way. I'm just going to experiment and see how it goes. Like, let me just play around with this authority thing. Not that you have to get it perfect, that like from this moment forward, every decision has to be made aligned with your authority. Let's just see how it works, see what feedback you get, see how it feels, right? So, like, number one, set the intention just to experiment. And then do your best with what you know. So, what your understanding is, because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck in the like, well, I just have to learn more. I just have to research more. I have to find another podcast talking about authority. authorities. I need to like Google authorities more. Like I don't quite get it. Just whatever
Mm.
your understanding is, just start experimenting with that. And then one of the next steps I would say is to look back and do some journaling or do some reflecting on what are some like pivotal decisions you've made, or what are some decisions you've made recently that feel fresh to you. And did you feel like you made that decision in a way that matches what your authority is? That maybe is it a little bit, that it maybe it's sort of that way? And just to let yourself reflect on it. Like, do you feel good about how that decision turned out? Do you feel like maybe it wasn't the best decision? But just like list out a couple of those instances and do some reflecting and do some journaling and see what you get, because there's often really useful information there. Like I said, when I looked back, and again, I didn't need to do this consciously because it just like popped up in front of my face, but I could see, oh, I'm doing the exact opposite of this. So get some knowledge about yourself, right? And see how you've been making decisions. And if you are a journaler, or if you like keeping track of things, you obviously don't have to do any of this, but start keeping a note in your phone, in your actual journal, however you like to keep track of things, of decisions that come up. And then try your best to apply whatever your authority is. You know, feel into what your spleen says, feel into your sacral, ride out your emotional wave, talk it out, wait a lunar cycle, you know, obviously for bigger decisions. Whatever your authority is, to the best of your current knowledge and ability, try and apply that. And this is my favorite tip, is when you're starting to learn this and when you're starting to experiment with it, just start to feel into your authority without having to make the decision. And so what I
Mhm.
mean by that is that practice with whatever it is, whatever decision comes up. It doesn't mean you have to follow through on that. So if your sacral is saying, go right, go right, go right, but you're like, oh, I don't know, that feels scary, I think I'm going to go left. Cool, do that,
Yeah.
right? The important thing at first is to let that voice speak, like the voice being your authority, but to start building a relationship with that, to see, can you get a handle on what your authority is saying? Even if it feels scary, even if you don't want to trust it yet, even if it doesn't make sense, that's okay. You do not have to, like, from this day forward, only make decisions with your authority. If that feels like a little too crazy to you, no problem. But just start building that relationship to see what it says. Because if you can build that relationship and know, okay, I think my spleen is saying to do this, but like, I don't want to, or that feels too scary for me, or that, like for whatever reason, okay, at least you have the information, and then you're making a
Yeah.
more informed decision, right? And then over time, you notice how your decisions feel. And like I said, if you're tracking it, if that's something you want to do, then you can start to see, oh, okay, here I used my authority, at least from what my knowledge is of it, and it worked. And here I didn't, and it also worked, or it didn't work, you know? And so you can start to
Yeah.
build this like trust with yourself. And the other thing that I want to talk about is the difference between what fear feels like and what a no feels like, because that's the
So
other thing that
important.
I think is so crucial, is that fear is often something that holds us back. And over time for me, it started to feel really clear, and I think a lot of people recognize this when it comes to what their authority is, because for me, at least at this point, my authority saying no, this isn't it, or this isn't the time, which again, by the way, often when your authority says no, it's not that this is bad and wrong for you. It's that this isn't the right time. You don't have the capacity,
Yeah.
you know? So that's a good thing to remember. But the other thing is learning for yourself, what does fear feel like versus what does a no feel like? And for me, fear usually has reasons. And fear is like, but what about this? And what if that happens? And what if this thing happens? And what if this? And you know, like
Mm.
fear I find is usually fast, and it's usually really mentally based. It doesn't matter what authority it is. None of the authorities, even like the mental authority, is not a super mental authority. It's not like this fast, yappy, oh my God, like this could go wrong and that could go wrong. Like they all are going to feel clear in a way. And like I said, it might take time for you to get to that place, but this is another thing that you can journal about or reflect on, is what that feels like for having clarity of like, yes, this feels good. No, this is not the right decision. And fear can also show up in the yes. Like I was sharing a little bit in my example of the apartment, that like, oh, I have to take this. If I don't take this, there's not going to be another opportunity. So it's like fear can show up in both ways, but our authorities generally don't come with a lot of explanation. They are just saying, like, confirming that like, yeah, this is the direction. You feel called, you feel pulled in this way, or like, no, not right now, or like, absolutely not. You know, maybe your authority comes with a bit more clarity, but they almost never come with a lot of reasons, which again
Yeah.
makes it difficult to trust. But that's actually one of the like secret codes, I think, for learning what your fear is versus what your authority is, because your fear has a lot of reasons. It has a lot to say when your authority generally doesn't.
Yeah, and those reasons are reasons that were given to us by other people typically, or like society. Maybe it can be like our anxiety, but again, where did that anxiety like come from? It's
Hmm.
from all these things that we hear versus authority. What I like to always harp on is like it's your inner authority. Like I am the
Yeah.
authority on my life versus these voices of, oh, but what are people going to think of you? Or, we talked about in the last episode of like you wanting to change your major and you were like, what were people going to think of you? It's like no one was going to think anything of you, but that's
No.
that feeling of an outer authority making the
Yeah.
decision for you. And the
Well, if
sort
I
of,
can also just
yeah,
interject for a second, speaking of anxiety, is that I believe that the more you use your authority, the more the mental anxiety calms down. Because a
yeah,
lot of the anxiety has to do with making decisions and trying to get it right and trying to make the right decision. And if
yeah.
you can hand that over and like release your mind from having to make the correct decisions, and you can trust your body to make that decision, and you can trust it to make good decisions for you, then that's a lot of relief of anxiety in your life, because
Yeah.
it's not on you, it's not on your mind.
And that's actually, I love that you interjected because that's what I was going to get into is like how cool this gift is of human design, of literally showing you like you actually have something that is trustworthy inside of you that is
Hmm.
guiding you all the time in the right direction. And we just need to get a little bit out of the way. Like when I say we, I mean like our minds need to get a little bit out of the way. We need to get external pressures and other sort of societal conditioning out of the way so that we can get more and more clear in the sense that like the voice, the inner authority is more and more clear to us. It's a little bit louder, it's more obvious, etc. All that other stuff, the mental anxiety, the societal conditioning, the what's my mom going to say about this, all of that stuff is just muddying up the phone line, to
Yes.
what your authority is calling you and trying to say. And I just think that that's the greatest gift, honestly. Like when I think about the fact that like human design gives us this, it's like, wow, like how, I don't know, I spent so much of my life before knowing human design, like I was saying, just like writing pro and cons lists and looking up how to make decisions. Like literally, like I remember like when I was
Yeah.
applying for jobs, like looking up articles on like how to make decisions, because to your point of this take that you have that I actually also agree with, of authority being so important, or being one of the most important things, maybe even over strategy, is because we are making decisions. We're faced with making decisions all of the time. And what
Hmm.
if you could just remove the fucking having to look up, ways to make decisions or talking it out with people when maybe you shouldn't, et cetera. Just removing all the stuff that doesn't work for you. Human design literally says, here's a way that it works for you. Here's how exactly
Hmm.
it works for you. And getting into the nuance, for me, it's not just an emotional authority in my example, it's unconsciously defined. It's connected with this particular channel, the 6 to 59 channel. So it connects to the sacral. And then I have, those, I can get into like the intricacies of my chart. But the point is, I want you to get into the intricacies of your chart, those of you that are listening, and getting into understanding not just one of the 7 authorities that you have that you're going to get so much information on from Katie's podcast episodes on it, but then getting more and more nuanced into, exactly how that operates in your body, not just that you have sacral authority, but that it's this channel with this connection, consciously or unconsciously defined, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so good. Everything you said, all those are amazing tips. And especially I like the one about, not forcing yourself to have to go through with the decision,
Yeah.
that your authority is giving you. Like if this is the first time that you're really experimenting with it, like what I was seeing in my mind was like, you're sort of building this timeline, and one timeline is like knowing my design and knowing what my authority was saying to do, but I didn't do it because it wasn't the right time and whatever, I'm afraid, and that's okay. But then there's this other timeline of when you actually start, making decisions and following through based on what your authority is telling you. That's like the living timeline. So we're starting to dissect in this like
Yeah.
knowing versus living your design. So if you're listening, go, if you haven't already, go and get your chart at the links below. Go and listen to the authority episode from Katie's podcast, which will also be linked below, and start to do this bit of journaling work or writing some stuff in your notes. And we would love to hear from you, by the way, in the comments, like what your authority is. We'd love to hear from you examples of when you made decisions based on your authority, when you didn't. Like we would love to hear all of that. So please let us know. And to wrap up this little section of authority, I was going to tee it back to you, Katie. What was a time after knowing your authority that you actually were like living it and like knowing what was happening and also like living it and it like worked out?
One of my favorite examples is that when knowing my authority, I think saved me like at least $50,000. right? I was going through this breakup. This was a couple years ago. And I was traveling at the time. I think I was in Spain. And I remember you and I were having this conversation and you were just losing your mind because like every 5 minutes, it was like a new life plan that I was creating of like, I'm going to go to Australia and take a sailing course and learn how to sail. And like, just kidding. I'm actually going to go to Milan and learn fashion design. And like, never mind. I'm going to move to Madrid and I enroll in Le Cordon Bleu and learn to speak Spanish while becoming a chef. And it was like just so hilarious. I think I was also going to move to London and
yes, start sewing. I think you were gonna, yeah.
Also for sewing, I think there were like all of these classes that I could take in London. And I was on such an emotional high actually after this breakup of like, oh my God, like I don't have someone to consider in my life now. I can do anything. I can go anywhere. And I would have, I think at a different time in my life, enrolled in all of those. I remember, you know, at that time thinking like I could put the 50,000 euro deposit down or like price, whatever it was for a cordon bleu. Like I could sign up. It starts in like 3 weeks or whatever it was. Like as if I don't have a whole freaking business to run. Like, sure, I can just go to full-time chef school for the next 9 months. Sure, that's a great idea. And but I remember I remember us laughing like hysterically at this.
Yes.
Because we knew, like, we were seeing this, like, in real time of, like, this emotional wave is hilarious. Like, you're so high on this wave. And I often say to people that if you have an emotional wave, when you're high on the wave, it's like you're drunk. And this is not a place of clarity to make decisions from, right? And thank God I didn't. Like, that would have, like, I still think maybe one day it would be a cool experience to do all of those things. But to my point I made earlier, that your authority telling you no isn't saying like this is a bad idea, you could never do this, but it certainly was not the right time for me to embark on any of those activities based on other commitments I had in my life and to my business and all of that. So that was, that's one of my favorite examples. Like I said, saved me a lot of money for not enrolling into 17 different things at once because I was just on an emotional high. And
yeah. And not just money, but like time, strife, energy. I mean, like you, like the level of commitment that you were about to jump into, not just commitments was
expensive commitments.
Right. Like expensive, both in time and energy, like, and money. Like it was just, it was so funny. And for those of you that don't know, Katie and I have been voice noting basically every day for like almost 5 years at this point. And we were dying. We were like this. I was like, bitch, do not make a decision right now. Like we both knew, but I was like, you were so high on this wave. Like you knew, and you were saying like, I know that I cannot decide this right now. Like I know that I'm on a high, but like how fun would this be? Yeah. And we were like, yes, let's imagine it. Let's just have fun with this drunk, high, emotional vision of what our life could be. And totally, please do not click checkout on the fucking cordon bleu deposit. My God. So so good. Thank you for sharing. And I feel like we have wrapped up just how important authority is and also how to work with it and how to actually begin to use, again, what I think is one of the most important gifts that we get from human design. And so even though we love authority so much, strategy is still important. So why don't we get into talking about strategy and our experiences of knowing versus living it. And also we can get into some practical tips of working with it. But before we yap away about strategy, let's just do a little recap for the listeners. Katie, what would you say is your definition and how you would describe strategy to be?
Yeah, so strategy to me is just the way in which you are designed to move through the world with like the least amount of friction and the most ease. And so it's like understanding mechanically how your machine works. And we have, one of 5 kind of types of machines. So like, are you a rocket ship? Are you a car? Are you a boat? Like they're all different machines that can all accomplish traveling through space and time, but the way that they do it is going to be different. And so if you're unfamiliar with your type, again, the link below will take you to my website where you can figure out your design. And then I have 2 podcast episodes, I believe, for each of the types. So you can go and learn and dive into your type and get more familiar with what that is. And then with type automatically comes strategy. And so like type, for example, I'm a manifester. My strategy is to inform, or as I would call it, to follow your urges and then inform. But regardless, every manifester is going to have the same strategy. Every manifesting generator is going to have their strategy. Every generator is going to have their strategy, etc. So strategy and type are always going to be paired.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, Katie has been so generous and has literally 2 podcast episodes per type that go into that type strategy. So we'll link those below for you guys. And yeah, I would just add to that. I very strongly agree with like, it's the way that your energy is meant to move through the world. I love to also just say like the way that you're meant to take action, just because right before I found human design, I had gotten this download in my life, this mantra for myself that was like trust and go. And to me, like trust is authority and go is strategy. It's like trusting yourself and then taking action. And I always love your reminder with the least resistance possible, because we're all meant to take action. And actually, this gets into one of the things that you were going to share that I know you're passionate about, this idea that we can all take action, but we're all different vehicles, but we just do things in a different way. But this is strategy is one of those places that can get really limiting for people. And I know that you have so much to say
Yeah.
about that. So yeah, what are your thoughts around like this limiting idea of strategy?
Yeah, I think this is where people feel like, oh, well, if I'm a generator and I just have to wait to respond, there's not going to be anything to respond to. Like, what am I going to do? Just have to like sit around all day and just wait? Or like, I'm a projector. I have to wait for invitations. Like, I'm never going to get an invitation for this. This isn't possible. Like, I get it. And this is where, again, I invite you to go through the experimentation. Like, same thing with any type, whether you're a manifestor, a manifesting generator, reflector. I get that sometimes it can feel a little bit confusing and a little bit like, I don't quite understand and I don't quite trust it. And again, that's why I invite you to experiment with your authority first, because it's a lot easier to build trust there. And then with the type, it's similarly, like I said, with experimenting with your authority, is to start to build awareness of it, but you don't actually have to follow it, you know? So you can, again, start to build up that body of reflection of whatever your type is. This is my understanding of what my strategy is. And looking back, is that how I've done things, or is that not how I've done things? And looking back, have things felt aligned? Have they felt easy, or have they felt really challenging? And like, it's just obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, because anyone can do anything, right? You don't have to go in accordance with what your strategy is, but it's probably going to be a lot harder. And so
Yeah.
it's like, it's a choice for you to make. This is why I invite people to experiment, because once you start experimenting, you get like, oh, that's what that can feel like. Like, oh, this can be that easy. This can feel that fun. This can feel that aligned. Things can be this synchronistic. And yeah, they can. Or you can fight and push and go with what conditioning is said about, like, this is how you have to live and this is how you have to get things done. And so I think it takes like suspending doubt and disbelief for a minute and see how things are actually playing out when you're in the experiment process, instead of just automatically thinking, oh, well, this is never going to work for me. Because I know projectors that get the craziest invitations. I know generators that have amazing things to respond to. You know, I know reflectors that are super aligned and like living lives they love. Same for manifestors, same for manifesting generators. And so it's just allowing yourself to believe that it's possible for things to happen in a way that feels good according to your design, and that you don't have to force it. You don't have to do it in a way that feels bad. You can just allow the experiment to happen and go from there.
Yeah. And I want to add to this idea of experimentation before we go further, because one of the things that we've sort of peppered in here a little bit is like, you don't have to follow through with something forever and commit to that thing forever once you've made that decision. So let's take a step back really quick, or I want to take a step back to this idea of experimentation. Experimentation is gathering data. One of the things that's helpful to me around this idea of gathering data and trying and testing things is that you can always change your mind later.
Yeah.
You can, like Katie was saying, when your authority says no, it's not, no, this is bad, you can never do it. It's just not the right time. Human design has so much to say about the right timing, which is, again, a thing that you always remind me of as a friend. It's like, maybe it's just not right now, and that's okay. It's not that this thing is bad or like wrong for you, or that you'd be wrong for doing it. It's just not the right time at the moment. And so experimentation, what the thing I wanted to drop in here is that it's not so set in stone. Not everything is so set in stone. Not every action that you're going to take with your strategy, it's not like you can never undo it, or every decision that you're going to make with your authority, it's not like it's all forever. Or even if you do or not, and you just imagine as if you would have done it and sort of start to track that information. I would love for anyone listening who's like excited to get started with human design. It's like, all of this stuff is so flexible. Like, you can, if you want to go super hardcore and just like commit to only strategy and authority forever and ever, like, yeah, sure, that's fucking awesome. And I know people that do that and love to get really intense in that way. way, I'm an intense person, so I can relate. And at the same time, if this is new, if you're like, I'm just testing this, you can be as loose and flexible with it as you want. You can take back your decisions. You can take back your fake decisions that you didn't make, but you thought you might make. Like all of this stuff can be I mean, I love this book title. I mean, I read the whole book, but you kind of get the whole book from the title, which is Everything is Figure Outable by Marie Forleo. It's like everything's figure outable. You can take an action and then you can figure out if that wasn't the right thing. It's not the end of the world. Not every action and decision, almost no action decision is truly life or death, unchangeable, forever set in stone. So I just wanted to pepper in this idea of like, it's okay. Like this stuff can actually be fun. We're just gathering data. Everything is figure outable. Everything is undoable, even if it takes some effort to undo it and some funky conversations, but like you can change your mind and it's all part of the process. The idea with this stuff is like, we want to get you to my experience of it is like, how can I just be the most me? That's what I think, and I know really that human design and even like Gene Keys and astrology, what they're doing for us is just like reflecting us back to us. And their whole job is for us to be, this is how actually Lacey Phillips would describe her work of manifestation work. She would say, the universe's only desire for you is to get back to your most authentic, whole, worthy self. And I would say that human design and then, Gene Keys astrology are tools for that. How do we get back to our most authentic, whole, worthy self? But most importantly, most authentic self. Like truly, how can you become the most you? How can you, it'll lay the truth bare, as you were saying, like with your strategy and authority in particular. And so that's it. That's the promise of this system, is just to get you to be the most you. And it can be quite fun, actually. It doesn't have to all be like so scary and life or death all the time.
And to that point, I think something that I often observe in people, and I've also done myself, is kind of trying to manufacture the experience of my strategy, because like, I want this to be true. I want this to work. I want this to be aligned. So I'm like, yeah, it's an urge. Like, yeah, it's like, no, it's an idea at most, this is not the like true manifestor urge that the force of the universe is behind me supporting this decision. This is just something that I think is a good idea and would probably make sense. And I want, I don't know, comfort or whatever it is you want from these things. So I'm trying to pretend like, no, this is an urge, when like, I know that it's not. Like, I know the difference at this point in the feeling. And again, that's the point of experimentation. And it's something that I see people do again and again, is they just want it to be the truth right now. So they kind of manufacture like, no, well, I think my sacral responding to this. Okay, try it out, experiment with it. And like, you and only you are ever going to know the difference of like, I think it's responding versus like it is. And that's something that just comes through practice. But I think a lot of the times it's like, I want this to be true. I feel like this is the right next step. So I'm just going to like pretend that it's aligned with my design. Like whether it is or it isn't, it's okay. But it's just like building that experience of yourself so that you do actually know. Because one of my perspectives is that human design is kind of magical in the sense of it being able to tap in to the cosmic order of things, to all of these synchronicities, to all of this alignment. And so one of the things when like you might see something as like, oh, this is the direction I should go, even though you're not responding to it, or your authority is telling you it's not the right time, but you think, no, this probably makes sense. Like maybe there's an even better opportunity for you 3 days from now or 2 months from now. And if you do this thing now, you're not going to have the space, and you're never going to know. You're not going to know that this missed opportunity passed you by, because like I see our auras kind of as like little pie charts, and we have at any given time a certain percentage of energy available. And so if we have only 20% available energy, and we think that this idea or this thing is going to be the right thing, and then we fill that remaining gap, and then something 2 days later comes that needs 20% of our energy, it's like, well, you're not even going to know. It's not even going to be in your awareness. So that's kind of one of my little magical ways of looking at human design, and just how the universe kind of conspires to do things that are in alignment for us. But we also have to be willing to play the part and to kind of like take that chance and to trust that, okay, if this isn't it, if this isn't aligning for me right now, something else is going to. And maybe that something else is going to be so much more amazing than this thing, but you don't have awareness of it yet. And so that's where that trust comes in.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the traps of just knowing your design, is manufacturing those like fake strategy pieces. Like for me, like, manufacturing like a fake response or something like that. And then getting caught up in something that maybe wasn't the right thing at the right time, and then the right thing at the right time, kind of floats by. I can definitely say that I've wanted things to be responses that aren't.
Yeah.
And I know what it feels like for things to be, in my case, as a manager, like a proper response. I'll share this example. I think about when I created my reading business course, Readings on Repeat. And for me, as someone that is a manager, I have a lot of ideas all the time, but they might not actually always be responses. And I also have 6 planets in Capricorn, so everything is very organized. And I have a whole Notion dashboard. It's called Biz Projects, and it has all of my business ideas. And one of the cool things about Notion is that when you make a new page, it automatically, like, literally stamps the date, time, minute, and second of when you made that page. And Readings on Repeat was an idea to sell my reading templates because I had been told, very line two, right? I had been reflected back to me by my human design teacher at the time and other people that they really liked the way that I organized my reading templates when I gave readings, because I would use these presentations to give them. And so I just wrote it down as an idea, and it has like a date and time stamp. And I wrote down lots of details about that idea and how I might sell this stuff and what templates would be and blah, 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 blah. And I just let it sit there. And it wasn't until 9 months later ish, from my memory, that it was the right time and the right place for that idea to actually fully come through. There was something else that happened that created a response in me, and actually several things. And one of the things that happened was a thing that had been taking up my energy. I moved it out of the way.
Yeah.
I said no to a commitment that I had sort of like been kind of roped into. And I was really difficult saying no to this person because they were my mentor, and it was really awkward and it was really weird. And finally I grew the balls to be like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And that space was cleared. Another thing happened that I don't remember what it was. And I was like, ooh, now is the time to sell my reading templates. And when I actually made it, it ended up being like a whole course. And that entire course, the first modules that I'm so proud of, I created all of that in about 3 days. All the templates, the workbook, all the modules, all of the slides, the entire like course platform, the entire sales page, did a whole like launch process for it, and had such a successful launch, like literally in 3 days. It was just the perfect like response. Like, yes, I have the energy. It's giving me energy back. And this is what I was saying earlier that I know that you know to be true, is the more that you experiment with your human design, the more that you become aligned with your human design, the less possible it is to do stuff that's out of alignment, because then you have experiences like this and you can never unhave this experience of knowing how fucking good alignment feels like, because then the next time that you try to manufacture a response, you're gonna be like, well, it doesn't feel like that time. It doesn't feel anything like what I know that a proper response in my case would feel like, or in your case, like a proper urge or whatever. Once you've known what like fucking amazing alignment feels like, everything that
so
isn't
good.
that, right? Everything that isn't that is so glaringly obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Maria, we are yappers. We yap on the regular. And so she knows that I have a million business ideas also.
Yes.
And there's been a few that I'm like, oh, these are good. Like, I know they would do well, but they're not an urge. And, one of the ways that I look at manifestor energy is that like we're a rocket ship that blasts off and then our fuel tank falls into the ocean, because it's like we only have so much, and then we're kind of just going. But if we don't have that blast off, if this is just like, yeah, okay, this would make sense. Like, it feels good. It could be interesting. I think it'll sell really well, but I'm not going to get into orbit, like there's no way for that to happen. And then it's just a struggle nonstop to try to get this stuff done, instead of feeling like I'm just high on life, working away, happy as a clam. So yeah, it's when you have those experiences, it's like, oh, I can't go back.
You can't go back. As my yoga instructor, Andrew, would say, his whole yoga teaching pedagogy book is called You Can't Unthink a Thought. Like, you can't unhave those experiences. You can't unknow alignment once you've experienced it. You're truly like, and human design would say this, it's like you're forever changed at a cellular level. And so you can't undo that. You can't undo those experiences. And again, I'll say this is where nuance of the stuff is important. It's amazing if this is your first time hearing about strategy and authority or getting into it. Love that. Keep experimenting with it, and just know that like many more gifts await as you start to then combine both. Like we talked about, like Katie and I are both emotional authority, but we have different strategies, we have different emotional waves, they're defined in different ways. And so once you feel like you've mastered a certain level of understanding the most important stuff, right, which is strategy and authority, then you can start to get into things like gates and channels and just adding on the nuance. And we have so much more to say about that in future episodes, which is exciting. But speaking of the nuance, one of the last things that we wanted to talk about is adding on that nuance, but just staying in in the knowing and sort of trying to
Yeah.
force these ideas in the same way that you might try to manufacture a strategy, response, or an urge or something like that. We can fall into that trap the more information that we get about this stuff. So yeah, Katie, what are your thoughts on this last piece that we wanted to add, which is just everything that isn't, strategy or authority, and still just knowing that, but not actually living it?
Yeah. And, I think I went on a rant about this in the last episode, but I will quickly recap my rant that obviously human design and knowing the details of your design, like you said, with getting into the gates, the lines, the channels, the arrows, all of this stuff, it's great to know. And something I see all the time because, I have a lot of students and we do Q&As all the time and I love them and they have great questions, but I often get questions like, well, I have this gate, so what should I do in my business? Doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's one of those things where it's like in hindsight, like using myself as an example, my chart I can really see is very clearly a chart that's here to share truth and someone that's designed to share transformational information in a way that's easy to digest and understand. However, had I looked at my chart and tried to reverse engineer that I should be a human design teacher, I don't think that would have worked because I wouldn't have been following my strategy and authority. And so speaking of like fabricating responses, when you
Right.
go and look at your chart and see, oh, I have the gate 56 in my blah, blah, whatever. So I should be a storyteller. Like you can tell stories through paintings. You can tell stories through being an architect. You can there's just so many
Yeah.
through your cooking, through your whatever, right? There's so many ways that can come about. It doesn't mean that like you are pigeonholed into this one thing. And now you got to go to ChatGPT to brainstorm business ideas for people with like XYZ gate. Like, please.
Yeah.
And
Don't do
listen,
that.
do whatever you want, okay? If that's what your strategy and authority is telling you to do, then have
Right.
at it.
Sure.
But it's like, you're not going to get like the magic of what we were just talking about by trying to fabricate it through your design. There's so many different ways that these energies can show up and can express themselves. And you're really doing yourself a disservice by trying to mentally figure this out when this whole time, what we're trying to get you to do is out of your mind and to get into your body. And I also recognize the support. I often use this word when it comes to human design, which I like never use anywhere else, but bolster. I feel like knowing your design can really like bolster you and give you this
Yeah.
support so that, for example, when I first got the urge to create HD school, I resisted that for a while because I was like, well, who am I to be doing this? And like, I've only been in human design for 3 years and there's all these other teachers and blah, 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 blah. Like I had all these fears. Remember what those fears sounded like? If you think back to what we were talking about earlier in the episode of like the mental fears versus what your strategy and authority actually sounds like. And it was so clear for me. Like I got the entire launch process like downloaded to me basically of like, this is the content and this is how you're doing this and this is what you're doing and this is what it's going to look like. And don't get me wrong, it was a lot of work, but
Yeah.
it was easy in that sense of like, it was just like the plan was given to me and I followed the plan. And even when I went to launch it the next time, I remember I got the urge to create this post on Instagram and I almost talked myself out of it because I thought, no, like maybe it's going to be confusing. Maybe it's like too advanced or like, I don't know what it was. It to date, with the exception of the video of me that went viral screaming into a pile of flowers, Balinese healing ceremony, whatever, I've taken it down off my page because it just continues to attract the wrong people. But
Yeah.
with the exception of that, this post was my most viral post and it's brought so many clients to me over the years. And it's just like, again, I couldn't have done the same thing if I went to my chart and thought, okay, I have this. And yeah, okay, I have the gate of assimilation in Jupiter in my gift. So I have a gift for making things make sense. Like I have a gift for teaching in that sense, right? But I don't think it would have worked. Rather, I know it wouldn't have worked out the same if I had gone to that and tried to force something to come out of it. Because I don't think I would have had the guts back then to create HD school if it was like my own idea, but it was
Yeah.
something that was like, this is what you're doing. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, here I am working with human design and like, I guess I gotta walk my own talk, right? And this is what it's saying for me to do. So, okay, let me experiment with it. And like truly the best last experiment of my life.
Literally. And I love to say that that's like one of the cosmic jokes of human design is that it's so bananas in the sense of the amount of information that there is, but actually you just need to follow your strategy and authority.
Yeah.
And trying to like have a spreadsheet of all your gates and all your lines and every channel and how it all connects and trying to like somehow force your life to like fit into that is not the way. The only thing you really need is
No.
strategy and authority. You know, what Katie's saying, the way that I sort of look at it is like, then in hindsight, you look back and see the pattern and see that it all
Yes,
makes sense.
exactly.
But it's not like in the moment I was trying to like force my knowing of what my chart is into what I think I should be doing. And part of what we're really speaking about is one of the things that's really important for anyone studying this stuff to get, which is that these, when it comes to gates in particular, gates and channels, these energies,
My
they
love.
are yeah, no, my love as well, especially as like a Gene Keys person. It's like I just love
Yeah.
to get into these 64 archetypes. I think they're just so they're like what the I Ching are. They're the codes to the universe. Like that's literally what the I Ching is. But they are essences. They are an essence. And what we tend to do when we are just in a state of knowing this stuff is that we know the English word or whatever language you're studying this stuff in, and we have that sort of colloquial understanding of what that English word is, and then we try to literally apply it in some type of way to our life. Like, what does it mean that I have the gate of alertness? Does that mean I need to be alert all the time or whatever? Like, that's not, that word is actually like an energetic vessel for a particular archetype and a particular essence that can be expressed in a multitude of ways. And again, I think it's summed up in this idea of it's not what you do, it's the energy with which you do it. And the energy with which you do it, those are where those essences of those archetypes really shine through. But we can just get in our way because it's so cool and it's so nice to have all this information about ourselves, right? It's
Yeah.
really nice. It's a gift. Honestly, if you're listening to this right now, like you are one of the lucky ones. Like these systems are really fucking
Mm.
random. Like I always say this, human design is like 35 years old and Gene Keys is like 15 years old. So astrology, obviously way, way, way older, but these two sort of newer sciences of astrology are so random and new. And it's so nice that we get to have all this information about ourselves. But both of these systems, and particularly human design, which is the focus of this series, it's about your human experience. It's about your body
Mm-hmm.
and like being and living it, not about knowing it. So it's one of the traps, of course, of the system. But there's so much information to know. But the immediate thing that you get to do with it is like live it, is embody it, is experiment with it, literally put it in your body and just see what it does.
Yeah.
And the only thing you need from the human design perspective is strategy and authority, and that's it.
Yeah, and one of the things I like that you say about human design sometimes is that the system chose you. Like
Yes.
this chose you. If you feel called to this, if you're feeling excited about this, if you're feeling like, oh, there's something interesting, like, you know, when I found human design or it found me, I
Yeah.
just couldn't get away from it. It's like, I just knew there was something here for me. And you probably have a similar feeling. And again, I believe it's because the system has chosen you. It resonates with you. There's something in you that it is here to unlock. And I think for most people, it can unlock something, but not everyone's going to be attracted to it. And it's like that attraction is part of the alignment. And so it's like to trust
Yeah.
that and yeah, to trust the inkling to go deeper into it and to learn more and to, yeah, learn all your gates and learn all your lines and learn all your arrows and your colors and your tones and your centers and your, like, you know, all of the stuff. Of course, I am always going to encourage that. Like, I love it. And it's this like restraint almost that you have to have of like, I know this stuff and I'm not going to let this knowledge run my life. I'm going to be in the experiment with my body. And at the same time, as it happens, I'm like, oh my God, this like makes so much sense because, you know, this gate, whatever, this line, whatever, this color, whatever. And it's like so fun to see that and to watch things unfold. But again, to watch things unfold, to participate in the experiment instead of trying to like extract and like excavate and like, well, this is this and I have this and I have this, so I should do this. And just because it's one of my favorite examples of people saying like, oh, you're limited by this, like you have an undefined throat, you can't have a podcast. And it's like, again, go tell Oprah that she can't have a talk show. Like, it's just like, that's not how that works. Right. And so there's things that, again, I believe that you might do that maybe go against your mental perception of your design of like, oh, I don't think I'm supposed to do this. But if your strategy and authority are directing you in that way, there is something there for you. Maybe there's a person that you're going to meet. Maybe there's something else you're going to discover. Maybe you're going to succeed in something that you never dreamed of. Maybe it's going to be a disaster, but you're going to learn a lesson from this disaster that you need for your next alignment to happen. Right.
Totally.
And it's like trusting that there is, I believe, more of a plan for us, and we are not alone here trying to figure it out. So if the system has chosen you, I kind of imagine it like a little Harry Potter sorting hat.
Literally. No, yeah. Like it's our little Harry Potter Hogwarts letter. Like that's just like
Yeah.
showing up and
It's
it's
yes.
telling us that we're invited. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I cannot get over how random these systems are. I always talk about how like the biggest human design account is like less than 338,000 followers. That's so fucking random. Like this is
Yeah.
truly, if you're listening to this, like you're special. There's something special about you. There's a reason that you're getting attracted to the system because this is so unknown still. It's so uncharted.
Yeah.
And to your point of like, if you're getting attracted to this, and I'll harp on what I said earlier, it's still really important to know all of this to get into the intellectual understanding because you can't experiment with something that you don't have an intellectual understanding on, but don't get in the trap of just staying in what you think that it means and
Hmm.
actually
Hmm.
rather put it to the test. Don't take our words for it. Don't just take what your first mental perception of something is that you're learning and actually put it to the test and see what happens. And yeah, if you're here, you might be being called to this for some reason to get into knowing the system and you have no idea the doors that it's going to open for you.
Yeah.
I did not know. And I'm so glad that I let those doors be open for me because now I get to have this amazing friendship and you and I have gotten to do so many amazing things together. And we've created such interesting businesses that have made such a big impact on a lot of people's lives. I know that we have some of the most amazing students and those are some of our most like fulfilling interactions. I know I'll just speak for myself, but I assume that you will agree, like would never have known that this is the kind of impact I would have, or the kind of like thing that I would
No.
create or what I'd be
And like
doing.
before I found human design, like if you told me I was going to be teaching something like this
Yeah,
in like the spiritual realm, you have no idea how that was nowhere near a possibility
yeah,
for me,
truly.
And so
Yeah.
again, I couldn't have ended up here by conscious choice alone because I wouldn't have. Nothing in this would have like back before I found human design, nothing in this was like, oh yeah, that looks fun. That's what I'll do. Like I thought this stuff was crazy.
Literally.
And look at me now.
No, I mean,
Just
seriously,
fully in the craziness. Yeah.
I went to school for marine science and I studied with a yoga instructor who actually is the least spiritual person alive and is mainly just focused on anything that is measurable and everything is anatomical and everything is just about the angle of a joint and the load that it's getting. And that's it. And we don't use any sort of spirituality to describe anything that's happening in the body. And I was so for that for a long time until I realized I'm actually not just sort of spiritual, I'm very spiritual.
Yes, I
And
know. I need to change my name.
yeah, super spiritual now. But yeah, my experience of first knowing this stuff and then going and living it is that it always is just taking me to that next right step and it's opening that next
Yeah.
right door. And as I'm opening those doors, I'm getting bolstered through my body of knowledge of this stuff can know that, oh my God, wait, this actually is like makes so much sense. And then
Yeah.
when I look back in hindsight, I can see even more pieces coming together. But the true sort of thing that's allowing me to do that is the fact that I'm living it, is the fact that I'm doing it, not
Hmm.
just learning all this stuff, which is so fun. And I will always be learning all this. Like you can never know everything, right? Like we'll always be
Yeah.
studying it. We'll always be deepening our understanding of the nuances of all this stuff. But what is it good for if it just stays in your mind? All the changes that will happen in your life will always be because you actually put it into practice, which is what Katie and I want for you is put this stuff into practice and see how fucking
Yes.
aligned and amazing your life will become. Like it's crazy.
And then send us a DM and let us know about the amazing
Yes.
things that are happening for you. I want
Please,
to
we
know.
would love to hear you. Yeah, and celebrate you. And then after you're done DMing us, if you haven't already, like we said earlier in the episode, pull your chart using one of the links below to get your type, which will tell you your strategy and authority. Then go and listen to, they're all linked below, your authority episode from Katie's podcast and your type, aka your strategy episodes, because there's two per, which is so generous. And then, of course, please comment them below. Tell us what your type, strategy, and authority are. And actually, we even have an extra little gift for you. Katie, what's your extra gift for the people?
Yeah, I just have a little authority cheat sheet for you because I know sometimes this stuff can get overwhelming. So I have a cheat sheet that lists all the authorities and gives you one kind of key sentence to anchor it in, as well as some additional information and what we talked about for the experimental process. So if you just want to recap on that, that's a really great way. And Maria was talking about her readings on repeat program in this. And so if you are interested in going deeper into human design and you want to get into the business side of reading, trainings as well, you just probably are going to want to get on the waitlist for HD School. The doors are opening for the waitlist on February 9th. So we're going to do a new bonus. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but maybe if you're smart, you're going to pick up on it. Something that you might get if you join HD School and you're interested in going the business route with things. So I'm not going to say what it is, but but just
wink,
saying you
wink.
probably want to get on the wait list. Yeah.
Yes, so good. Your friendly neighborhood Gate 45 son giving you guys all of the gifts. You're in the presence of the most generous human design teacher on the internet. Everything is linked below. Please DM us if you have any questions. And hopefully you got out of this episode how amazing it is to not just know yourself, but also live your design. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about how powerful it is to know what you're not. And with that being said, we will leave you here. We'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Subscribe, comment, join us for the next episode, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
There you have it. You have all of the resources available to you. You are in the presence of one of the most generous human design teachers on the planet, Katie Irvin. Just typical Gate 45 conscious sun sharing all of the resources available. So you have your homework. Go get your chart if you haven't already using the links below. Listen to your strategy episodes because there's 2 per type. Listen to your authority episode and then go download that authority cheat sheet. Start your experimentation. Comment below what your type, strategy, and authority are. And then, of course, get on the waitlist for HD School if you want all the bonuses, hint, hint, wink, wink, and all the best deals. And now hopefully from this episode, you got how important it is to not only know yourself, but then also put your human design into practice. And in the next episode, we are going to get into the power of knowing who you're not, because that can be equally as useful as to knowing who you are. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.